Okay, so this is our final paper for today. Very pleased to welcome Aimee, Nisa and Aimee Grant talking about authentic inclusion, actual reasonable adjustments, a culture of acceptance, creating accessibility for community involvement in autism research. So over to you. Thank you.
Can you see my slides okay, Alison?
Yep, really clear. Thank you.
Perfect. Lovely. Well, thank you so much for having us along and for coming back after lunch. I'm Aimee Grant and I'm here today with my colleague Aimee Nisa. And as Alison has already introduced us, we are part of the Autism from Menstruation to Menopause study. But we have a huge team, so their names are on the slides as well as our social media if you'd like to follow along. So before I get into the detail, let's just give you a bit of an overview. So I'll start off talking a little bit about our study, and I'll then focus on how we co-developed the grant application and then those initial developments of our community council, and then the things that I do to make the community council accessible. I'll then hand over to Aimee Nisa, who will talk about our methods for evaluating the council and then some feedback from our first 2 rounds of community council annual evaluations, and then some of the changes we've made based on their feedback. On this slide, I've also put a link to our studies protocol paper, which is in BMJ Open, if anybody wants to have a look at the whole study in more detail. So very briefly then, our study has 4 work packages. The first is to develop Wales's first autistic research community council, and that council is what I'm talking about today, and then they're involved in everything. So in the evidence reviewing, the yellow box in the centre in terms of doing a longitudinal interview project of up to 1,000 interviews, and they're all focused on autistic reproductive health. And then moving on to the blue box, we're hoping to have some impact with this. So we're doing a lot of talking to different people. We'll be creating a toolkit, and overall we'd like to improve healthcare for autistic people. But you're not here to talk about that today, so I'm going to get back to focusing on our community council. And the community has been really important throughout. So when I developed the grant application, I worked with Kat Williams from Autistic UK, their research director, and also Willow Holloway, Autistic UK's chair. And Willow is also the interim chair of Fair Treatment for the Women of Wales. And they gave me a lot of feedback. I was quite new to being an autism researcher at the time. So I had over a decade of postdoctoral experience on maternity experiences, got my autism diagnosis and thought, let's put these 2 things together. So I did a community consultation with 27 autistic people who'd given birth, and they wanted some big changes to the application. And notably, they said, what about endometriosis? What about contraception? What about the menopause? And so I changed from just maternity to the whole reproductive life course. And we're funded by the Wellcome Trust, who have given me just under £2.5 million for an 8-year project. And we wrote about this in a chapter on how we co-developed the application. And so when we got the funding, I already knew Kat and Willow would be central parts of my community council, and they introduced me to 2 other autistic community leaders, both of whom are from minoritized ethnicities. And so we worked together, and I'd planned for about 3 months, but it actually took us closer to 6 months to decide what we were going to do. And I think that was worth doing because we really wanted to make sure we made our council a safe and accessible space. So also, one of our community leaders, Selena, suggested that I should actually write this up for publication because they felt it was so different to other co-production experiences they had. And they talked about how I wanted to make a safe space up front by meeting people's needs, but it could still be hard to be in a space because they had hangovers from being in neurotypical centered spaces. Another thing they talked about was the unusualness of feeling valued. So I made sure everyone was paid for all of the work they did. That wasn't common, especially being paid for preparation time. And also I created space. So there was always plenty of space on the agenda because I wanted to hear what they were saying rather than mostly me or the other academics talking. And all of this meant that it felt very collaborative. And also, everyone was kind of taking care of each other. So, initially, when we were talking about reasonable adjustments, it was very much felt like I was talking about reasonable adjustments the others had. But actually, I'm autistic too. And one day I forgot something, and everyone was really kind and generous to me and were like, it's okay for you to forget things as well, which I've never had in another academic space. And the thing that brought this all together was being quite intentional. So, we were all insiders, we were all autistic. And but more than that, as soon as we knew there was a way of doing something better, we immediately did it. So that was our first 6 months working with 4 autistic people who were really experienced advocates. But I wanted to get a council of 12 autistic people because I thought, we wanted a minimum of 6 to 8, and we've got an 8-year project, so we needed to allow for some drop off. And it was really important to me to identify and meet individuals' needs. So we ran an online expression of interest, so people could fill in an online survey or a Word document, but also to make sure we weren't just getting those highly educated people that you see in a lot of autism PPI. We gave people avenues where they could speak to a member of the team or write to them, or in whatever way worked best for them to give their answers. And more than half of people used that support. We recruited another 8 people, and one of them left quite soon after. And I think that was that I hadn't quite explained what the role was well enough. I think they were expecting something much more like being a research participant. And we have got some level of differing support needs in our council, not as much as to be representative of the autistic community, but I think, often we don't see people with learning disabilities or non-speaking people represented at all. So I think we're doing better than nothing, but not quite as good as we would have hoped. And I proactively offered everyone support before they started. I didn't wait for things to go wrong. And this list of things was developed with the community leaders. So I think we send out documents in 6 different formats before the meetings. People can have tailored reminders. So on whatever platform they like, at whatever time they like, to remind them to turn up. 5 of my 11 regularly have an hour's one-to-one meeting with me before or after the council. And we also provide or pay for support workers for 2 people with higher support needs. And so I think what we've tried to do here is really like bake in accessibility. And some of the other things we have is we have a reminder about inclusivity and to say this is a learning space. It's okay to get things wrong, and we're all autistic, so it's okay to do whatever you need to do. I share documents on the screen in real time and kind of guide people along where we are. We also have a short summary of what people have said gone into the notes, and people can ask one of the other researchers to remind them what's been talked about. We vote when we make all decisions about the study, and I also complete payment forms for everybody. That's something our policy says that I can only do it as a reasonable adjustment, but I feel like that's a reasonable adjustment for everybody, because I would probably need someone to complete the forms for me, or I just wouldn't bother. Also, in the following month's meeting, I check that everyone's received that payment. And then every 3 months, when I get the budget through from finance, I do another check for them. And after the council had been going in its full form for a year, I did one-to-one access discussions with everybody again. And most people had at least one small thing that they added in. We've decided that we don't need to do those every year because people are contacting me and saying if there's something they'd like to change. And I think it's important to say that it takes about 2 days a week for me to do this, running one council meeting a month. That's a half-day meeting. So it does take quite a lot of time to do all of this. And it's really important to me that we learn from this. So I'm now going to hand you over to Aimee Nisa, who's going to talk you through our evaluation of the council.
Thank you, Amy. Next slide, please. Okay, great. So we have some different ways of evaluating the council. So to make sure what we're doing is working and to also figure out what might not be working. So members can informally provide feedback at any time, such as contacting us before, during or after meetings or in their one-to-ones with Amy. But we also have some formalised ways of obtaining feedback. So after each council meeting, members are able to fill out a survey to provide feedback. Alongside this, we have a yearly evaluation. So far, we've done 2 of these and we've got another one due in the coming months. So in July of 2024, we had 11 out of the 11 respondents, and in June of last year, we had 9 providing feedback. And accessibility for the evaluation is also prioritised and baked in. So the method of evaluation is dependent on the council member. So some members have given feedback through an online survey, while others have provided feedback through a semi-structured interview. These interviews have all been held through online meetings, but again, it depends on the needs of the council member. So for example, some have been undertaken with the video off. And we also have, one where I've asked questions through the video, but the council member then responds by messaging through text in the chat feature. Once we've obtained the feedback, we anonymise and collate the information and then present the findings to the council in one of our meetings. So this allows for the individual feedback to be shared and also provides an opportunity for discussion around points that have emerged through the evaluation. Next slide, please, Amy. So here are some choice quotes that indicate the kind of feedback we've received about what members think about council. I'll read out for anyone who needs it. So we've got one that says, I like meeting with Amy, that's Aimee Grant, and telling her my feelings. She will give me plenty of breaks. Another one, it's okay to have brain fails. I just need to ask questions as in what happened in the last 5 minutes. We've got amazing, but that doesn't cut it. It's very validating, reassuring, have found a sense of community, feel completely safe and accepted. And finally, we've got it's the one place where I actually feel that I don't have to put on a mask. So not only is the feedback personally fulfilling for us to hear, as is, it's always nice hearing compliments, but I think it just highlights how impactful doing work like this can be. Next slide, please, Amy. We've also asked members what council meetings feel like. So members have said things like they feel like they're able to attend even if they haven't prepared. They don't feel guilty or worried about this. So some also feel more prepared than usual because of the regular reminders. It means their access needs are being met. And there's also less pressure to perform as it's an affirming environment. We've also been told that communicating in meetings feels okay, and again it's because the access needs are being met, so members feel comfortable having the camera turned off and to only communicate in the chat if needed. For most it was easy to follow what was happening in meetings. For those that didn't find it easy, particularly those with a learning disability and being non-speaking, the one-to-ones with Amy before the meetings definitely helped, as it gave them a primer of what the meeting was to be about and the things that they would need to think about. We also found that there was a high level of mutual respect amongst the council members. So some feedback was concerned with how their access needs might clash with others' access needs. So for example, there's a quote here that says, I find repetition quite hard, but recognise for it to be inclusive, there's going to need to be some form of repetition. So members could understand and appreciate everyone's differences in the council. All of the members expressed that they found the council to be a safe and an empowering space. There was some concern, however, that they would somehow break the norms of the group. So, for example, they might inadvertently offend somebody. So being autistic, I can really relate to this. Lots of our members have had difficulties in group contexts before, and some of those fears were definitely present in evaluation discussions. Nevertheless, although some of the fears were present, they did feel a sense of community within the group and enjoyed that they could regularly meet with a group of autistic people. And there's also a preference for the group not to use breakout spaces. So members liked that we could be all together and thought that breakout spaces would create a pressure to perform or feel like they would be singled out. So the relative anonymity of a larger group felt safer, and that's particularly for our quieter and non-speaking members. I think that was important. Next slide, please, Amy. So based on the feedback from the evaluations, we've made numerous changes to how we run the council. We now have a standard reminders poster that's displayed at the start of the meeting and also during breaks, which you can see here. It gives a reminder of how the council operates and lists the expectations for the meetings. And for anyone that is unable to read it out, I'll just quickly read out what is said on the reminders poster. So we've got private space only, no AI, reminders are okay, forgetting is okay, we are all autistic, stim or take a break, tell Amy if things are hard, for long things type note or ... that's for the chat, and then raise your hand, headphones if others may hear. So the feedback is continuous. So we recently added the no AI section to the poster after a discussion in a council meeting about AI note takers as an accessibility accommodation. So we reached a consensus and decided not to have any AI used in the meetings due to concerns around members' privacy, and that the researchers on the team provide a note-taking accommodation in the meetings anyway. Another change we made was to have more detailed email subject lines. So if there was a required or an optional task for members to do, we would indicate that. We would indicate if this email was to read only or if there were any deadlines or anything like that. And this would all be included in the email subject line. We also began creating easy read versions for all our communications. So this means that communicating with the council does take a lot of time. So, Aimee Grant spent, 2 days a week doing it, but also it means that anytime we need to contact the council, you can't just kind of ping off a quick email. There are lots to consider, but it has been really beneficial for members to feel genuinely accommodated for. So yeah, it does take a lot of time communicating. We've also created a template so members would have a designated space to collect their thoughts for meetings. We have a live summary provided, so during meetings, a member of the research team is acting as a live note taker. So if anyone has missed what's been said, or if they forgot something, they can consult the notes or ask a member of the team to repeat or explain something to them. We've also added pre-meeting one-to-ones for 2 extra council members. So Amy meets with them before meetings to go through what will be discussed with the meeting. So that's additional since the start of the project through feedback. 2 extra council members now have one-to-ones. So yeah, a lot of work has been done based on the council's feedback. Next slide, please, Amy. Okay, so to wrap up, our project set out to push back against the kind of tokenistic involvement that autistic adults are so often offered in research. Using a community-based participatory research approach meant that treating participation is a genuine sharing of power, not just sort of a box to tick. So from co-writing the grant to building a diverse community council, autistic adults have helped shape and steer the project from day one. Along the way, we learned a lot about what it actually takes to make involvement accessible and meaningful. We also heard directly from council members about what good participation looks like and feels like for them. And together we shaped the processes, recruitment and support systems that are focused on flexibility, learning and creating a space where people could sort of genuinely show up as their autistic selves. So over 2 years of feedback, the council members have told us that they found the experience enjoyable, inclusive and valuable, but they have also been honest about challenges like feeling under or over prepared or worrying about how their access needs might interact with others. And these reflections really highlight both the possibilities and the complexities of doing community-based participatory research with a group of autistic adults with a wide range of support needs. But overall, what this project does show is that meaningful involvement is possible. It just takes time, care and proper resourcing. And if we want sort of the involvement to be real and not just symbolic, it has to be really funded and supported in a way that makes that possible. And the next slide, please, Amy, that's our references. And then the next slide is our contact information for the study.
Fantastic. Thank you both so much. And I absolutely love the phrase baked in, that you could it kind of summarizes it perfectly. Exactly. It's part and parcel of what you're doing. Lots of very, very, kind of positive comments in the chat from people who really respect what the approach that you've taken, people who perhaps sort of tried doing things like this, and they acknowledge how difficult it is. There's a question from Angela, which is what kinds of things do you discuss and decide in the council meetings? So could you give us a couple of examples?
Absolutely everything to do with our project. So when it comes to our evidence review and the findings of our interview study, the researchers will do the first round of coding, but then we will have a group of people from the council, maybe around 5, who will work quite intensely to do the analysis of that data together. They decided which avenues we should use to find our participants for the study. Like, should we reach out to non-autism affirming organisations to try and reach more people with high support needs, or should we not? And also we create a package including some templates that people could use to talk about particular topics for each interview, and they review those, so that they're involved in absolutely everything.
Excellent. Thank you. Damien has written, have you had a paper out? I think Aimee has put links to
Yes,
two of the papers just at the start, but it's quite a way back now.
yeah, so we've had a paper on how I co-developed the grant application, and then a second one called Building Our Own House, which was in autism, on that initial bit of developing the council, and also a protocol paper for the whole study. So I can pop those links in the chat again.
There we go. I think I've just managed to do that, but double check that I have done it correctly.
Thank
Aimee,
you,
Alison. Yes, so Joy is excellent, can you share our project's very poorly informed, having heard this. And I think what you're saying, it feels like absolutely gold standard, and 40% of FTE just shows how much time and energy it takes to do accessibility properly. But as you said on your concluding slide, that this is when you design things based on universal design, everybody benefits from this, and that seems to be the feedback that you're getting, that this is something that everyone benefits from.
Definitely. And I mean, so it's really important to me that our evaluation isn't a tick box exercise. So like, that's why Aimee Nisa is doing it. So then people can feel free to be like, oh, I really hate it when Aimee blah, blah, blah. And no one said that yet, but, they have felt free to say, when there are things we could do to improve things. So Aimee's been super valuable with that evaluation.
That's great. Leanne has said, I'd love to be in touch for some advice. Well, please check out Aimee and Aimee's contact details, and please do get in touch. So question from LB, which is, how can we convince, we're sort of talking amongst people who are absolutely committed to accessibility. How do we convince others that it's helpful to do this kind of thing, the time commitment alone? Lots of people just don't understand, what's involved. So any advice there?
So I think it's really important to work with funders. So I'm working with Health and Care Research Wales so that it becomes expected. I mean, like 15 years ago when I was first running studies, having one single individual who was supposed to be lay, but they were probably like a master's student or something, and they would come and sit in a room with a load of professors and like medical consultants, and that would be your PPI done. I think we're moving away from that. But I think I'm certainly working with funders to say you should expect better. Every time I review a grant, I'm like, this PPI is really weak. This isn't going to achieve anything. Because I think it's so important that this is paid work for the researchers as well, because it takes a lot of time to do it well. So I'm hoping we will just see it increasingly built into funding applications, and maybe like for doctoral students, maybe doing 30 interviews and having really, really good community involvement should be seen as equal to like 50 or 60 interviews without that. I mean, I've certainly reviewed some really good doctoral theses recently, with lower number of participants, but they've done really, really good community involvement. So I'm certainly a good examiner. If you want to do that, I'm sure Damien would be as well.
Yeah, always good to know a good examiner. But as you say, it's putting it in, and it's putting that pressure on them, isn't it, to sort of say why they wouldn't fund that. James has asked if you've published your materials. James, if you could scroll up the chat a little bit, there are a couple of links there to two papers that have been published. Yeah, Damien,
also, Aimee Nisa will be writing up our evaluation. So we're going to carry on doing our annual evaluations this year and next year. And then we're going to write a paper on everything we've learned from 4 years of evaluating the council. So keep your eyes peeled, follow Aimee Nisa as well.
Wow. Well, I was going to say, if you could take away kind of the main thing that you've learned so far, it's